Welcome to another episode of Ecom Experiences, a podcast for e-commerce marketing leaders who want to grow and scale their brands faster. Join us as we interview some of the smartest brand founders and marketing leaders in the industry. Explore the lessons they learned, discover the keys to their success, and discuss what excites them most about the future.
Hi, it's Samir Balwani here, host of Ecom Experiences, where we talk to brand founders and marketing leaders about their experiences growing brands. This episode is brought to you by Query. Query is a paid media agency that helps brands balance brand awareness and performance marketing to drive predictable and profitable growth. To learn more about how we can help you, visit weareqry.com. I'm really excited for our guest today. I have Craig Horsley, the Director of E-commerce Growth Strategy from Revision Skincare. Thank you so much for joining us, Craig. I know there's a lot for you to teach us and talk about.
Good morning. Happy to be here and love the podcast. It's always good to find a good e-commerce podcast. So really enjoy what you do.
I appreciate that. I'm excited to have you as a guest. So tell us about you and the brand you work for.
Sure. So I've been in the e-commerce space, let's just say a long time. I actually started in e-com in 2000. And you know, what's interesting was in 2000, you couldn't really measure much in the e-commerce space except for sales. And now you can measure pretty much everything. So you've gone from ditch to ditch, no data to data overload. Now it's picking the right data to look at. So I've been with some different companies over time, both on the retail side at jcpenney.com back in the early days, to where I am today, CPG. In the last 6 years or so, I've spent in the skincare category. So Revision Skincare, as you mentioned. So I've been with the company here about 8 months. So not a long time, but Revision Skincare, a premium beauty brand, if you will, primarily has cut its teeth, working with dermatologists, plastic surgeons, med spas. It's a clinically proven skincare product that, from an e-commerce perspective, you can either find on our DTC site at revisionskincare.com or, on Amazon in the premium beauty category.
That's really cool. I love the premium beauty category, especially because as soon as you get dermatologists involved, there is a level of credence you have to fulfill on, and you have to be able to prove it and show the value of it, right? So tell me, what's the favorite part about the role for you? What do you love about it?
Yeah, for me, and the reason I'm in this business to begin with is it's fast paced, always changing. So, you never get bored. That's good and bad because it becomes hard to relax sometimes. But when I look at the fast pace of things, and, I mentioned it kind of in the beginning, how things have changed in the e-commerce space over the last 25 years, there's always new things coming. There's new ways to talk to consumers and customers. And that's super exciting for me because at the end of the day, the goal and the mission is to have that relationship with a consumer or customer and make sure that you're talking to them and having that great relationship so that they can trust you and will continue to buy your product.
Yeah, I think you used a really important word, relationship, and it's like relationships at scale, right? That's the beauty of e-com. The role is definitely fast paced. Everything is constantly changing. How do you keep up with what's changing? Where do you turn to? How do you set aside time to make sure that you're, ahead of the curve?
Yeah, it's hard. And I say it's hard because we're a relatively lean organization. But I think the key is, you got to take a step back and make sure that you're prioritizing the right things. In the world I live in, and probably most of us in this space, you tend to get a lot of what I like to call fire drills. Probably most
Yeah.
people call them that. And things are always moving really fast and everything's important. Well, if everything's important, then nothing's important.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about prioritizing what are the goals, what are the objectives, and making sure that we're spending the time in the right places and staying on that mantra. There's always going to be fires. There's always going to be things that you have to do to make sure leadership has what they need to be successful. But prioritization is really the
Yeah.
number one key.
It's interesting because there's fire drills and then there's shiny object syndrome, and they're like two sides of the coin, right? And so it's how do you kind of sit in the middle and make sure the foundational stuff is still getting done while and staying ahead of all of that, right?
You could not have said it better. The shiny object syndrome is a huge one too.
Yeah.
When you live in a world where you're owned by private equity like we are, people see
Oh
those
yeah.
shiny objects all the time. Whether it's what's the shiny object today? It's AI, right? What are
Yeah.
you doing with AI?
Yeah.
How are you leveraging that? And that's just, that's always going to be there. But
Yeah.
again, you have to balance that. But there are
Yeah.
things you got to pay attention to too.
It's almost there is an element to prioritizing even those pieces, right? Like, what are the things? How do you build a business case? How do you prioritize it? And that's probably a whole nother conversation to be had around that.
A hundred
Uh,
percent.
so, Craig, as we kind of look ahead, what are the challenges that you guys are dealing with? What are the things that are kind of keeping you up at night?
I think there's a couple things, right? So
Mhm.
I look at competition, especially in the e-commerce
Mm,
space. I think no secret today, and if you read any of the trades, beauty is one of the fastest growing categories in the e-commerce space. You've got Amazon aggressively pushing to build their growth in beauty, and that brings in new brands all the time. There's
yeah,
always, again, going back to the shiny object piece of it. So competitive pressure when you come in,
yep,
especially if you're advertising and we advertise, that increases your ad cost. It hurts your
yeah,
share of voice potentially, and you have to stay on top of that. So, that's a big one. But secondarily, I would say channel conflict is a current concern for us.
mm,
We've got to be very mindful of our core customers. And when at the beginning we talked a little bit about the dermatologists, the plastic surgeons, the med spas, et cetera. And we got to be very careful not to disrupt that side of the house. And
right,
so we've built a strategy to kind of support that, but it's always very top of mind for us. And then, I think the other piece, especially in today's world in e-commerce, is with any kind of brand, is diversion or third-party sales. You've got people that are always looking to make a buck in the marketplace,
yeah.
and they get their hands on your product one way or another, and they sell it, and it can be damaging to the brand. So staying on top of that, that's a hard problem to solve, but I would look at those three as the big pieces.
Yeah, and are you seeing diversion most likely on Amazon? I'm assuming that's the majority of it.
Well, that's a great question because one of the things, the answer is no. And the reason the answer
Oh,
is no
interesting.
is because in the premium beauty category, and this is a strategic decision, it's a gated category. So our
Right,
brand is
right, right.
gated. If anybody gets out there, then Amazon takes them down. So that's a nice
Nice.
piece of it.
Yeah,
Uh, I've been in other places where that hasn't been the case.
yeah,
Uh, So, there's that side of it. I think one piece I left out, and I want to call this out because it's super important. I
yeah,
think challenging, and maybe I should have started here because it's bringing new consumers to the brand.
yeah,
Getting your brand out there, growing the brand, and bringing new consumers in is always a
yeah.
challenge. And we're a growing brand, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's interesting because uh, the more we talk to brand leaders and marketing leaders, and uh, the conversation has shifted, and I think in the right direction. I mean, we pegged our whole agency on this idea around brand is becoming more and more important, and people really are starting to remember the value of brand. And the pendulum is finally swinging from performance marketing at all costs to, oh yeah, I guess we do need to build like a long-term business that has a moat in its brand and community. And it is comforting to come back to that, marketing fundamentals a little bit. And it's interesting to see how everybody is hitting that same pain point all at once. I guess when you are thinking about growing the brand and what that means to grow the brand, can you expand on what you guys think about that, how you think about that, where you think you'll win from that perspective?
Absolutely. I think uh, you just touched on a big piece of that, right? So it's
Yeah.
really about focusing on the brand versus the product. What is
Yeah.
your brand story, right? It's real easy to get caught up in product marketing. We
Yeah.
have great products and we take those products to market. We're very proud of that. But what is the brand story? You can't lose sight of that. Making sure that your media talks to that efficiently and that you're talking to the right audiences along the way. That's another
Right.
big part of it. And that's where you get back to the data piece and the technology piece that, again, in your business that are so prevalent today.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that we notice from a media perspective is a lot of brands will come to us and say, "Hey, we want to build a brand story, and we're going to go out to market. And here's our brand story, and here are all the reasons to believe, and here are all the communities and segments that we want to go after. And our budget is X. And budget is X is always a tenth of what they need to do all of that. And so a lot of the work we do is help our clients and brands really understand, okay, if your budget is this is the segment and the story we start with, and then we grow from there over time. And it's really, going back to prioritization, this is another example of prioritization of where do you start? And how have you guys thought about that? Like, where did you start?
Yeah, what a great call out that was because we have the same problem. We don't have the deep pockets in the world. And,
Yeah,
and
no, you're
so
not Coca Cola. You're not going to go like and do a TV spot tomorrow. That's like it's going to hit everyone. So
100%. And so, where it really gets tricky then is you go through any given month. Obviously, you're looking at sales on a daily basis in your various channels. And as you get to about this time of the month, the 17th,
yeah,
18th, 20th, whatever it is, you start to see, are you going to make the number or are you not?
yeah,
And
you're
it's real
reforecasting at this stage.
and it's real easy to get caught into this trap of, okay, now you got to shift all your dollars to performance marketing, right? So you're
Yeah,
you're all going all low funnel, capture every dollar you can for the last 2 weeks and make these pivots. And that is an ongoing conversation for me. I'm like, if you do this, you can't have this. And
yeah,
these are about decisions.
yeah,
And to your point, with limited budgets, and we have one of those, then you have to be willing to look at what is your overall objective. And if it is growing new customers, let's pick the right KPIs, right? And
yeah,
these aren't going to be ROAS and sales necessarily, right? Because those take a little bit longer to hit home. But you've got to be diligent and you've got to sit on your goals and you got to stay firm with what you're trying to achieve. And if you do, you know, by and large, you're going to be successful over time.
yeah. This is where I think marketing mix and media mix, like channel mix, is so important, and then media mix is really important too, because so many brands fall into the hamster wheel of on the 7th, like 15th or 17th, saying, "Hey, we're behind goal. We're going to have to reforecast," and you reforecast, and you pull all the budget to bottom of funnel, or in a lot of cases, you just cut budget, right? Because you're gonna miss goals. So you say, all right, well, then my media spend can't be nearly as high, or my marketing spend can't be nearly as high, which is fine. It's a very safe thing to do. But you're going to be in the same situation the 15th of the next month then. And it becomes this hamster wheel you can't get out of because you haven't grown that brand awareness or top of funnel element.
100%. And I think that that is where educating your leadership is so important. I have those same challenges all the time. People
Yeah.
come to me and say, it's not working. It's not working. And, my answer is, yes, it is working. We're just not seeing the fruits of our efforts yet. And we've got to
Yeah.
be a little bit patient on that. So educating, and that's where I turn to education. It's making sure that you, God forbid, I hate to say it, but have the right PowerPoints in front of your
Yeah.
leadership to say, this is how this is going to progress over time. And if
Yeah.
if you set the expectations right, hopefully they'll hold on. Now, how long they're willing to wait, that's a whole nother story. But I think education's a really big, important part of it. Channel mix, like you said, you got to be smart about this. There's 1,000 ways to advertise.
Yeah. And I think the part that people forget is advertising is a piece of marketing, right? And so sometimes people assume when we say top of funnel, that means, okay, great, just run, display ads or CTV ads or meta ads to cold audiences. That's not always the case. It might be a PR stunt or an experiential event or something like that. And so I think that's where your role gets really interesting because you get to look at all the puzzle pieces and say, all right, well, this is the puzzle piece I want to pull out today and put in place here because this works better. So how do you guys think about that? Like, how do you move money out of advertising or into advertising or activate other elements? Like, how are you kind of looking at the whole landscape?
Yeah, I think for me, it always comes back to what does the data tell me and what does the consumer tell me?
Right.
Um, So, in our DTC channel, obviously, we get a lot of real time information about how consumers engage with us, how they're interacting with our website, and we're able to make decisions and changes based on that kind of data. Then, when you get out
Mm,
into the media space or the Amazon space, in the media space, there it's what are the consumer trends? What are people searching for?
right.
Where do the demographics take you? What are the audiences that are resonating? And we look at that all the time. I every week I sit down with our agency. Um, a couple of different times, one on the Amazon side, one on the DTC side. And we go through that. We look at that very in depth. What is working
Mm,
and what do we need to pull back on and move to other places? So it's really about being as efficient as we can be with the dollars that we have
yeah.
and using the data really. I think that's where you get the advantage. It's a lot of work and can be a lot of work, but if you're scrappy and you get into the insights and you're able to pull the right story out of that, I think you will be successful.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think it is fun because it is a lot of data, and then, but another challenge that's going to be coming up is just measurement and data tracking as a whole is going to start to shift, especially as you layer in more brand work, right? And so, really rethinking how you look at data, what data matters, and kind of going back to your concept around data overload and what's the right thing to look at. Um, that's starting to become a whole nother project, another whole nother swim lane just by itself.
Yeah, great point because, you know, we have so much data accessible today. But
Yeah,
to your point, and I can pull any number. I can tell you what campaign did what last week.
yeah,
But there's a lot more to it than that, as you know, and it's really getting into it and understanding what's the story. Why did that happen? And that's really what it boils down to. If you understand the why, then you can make the right tweaks. And maybe that's a creative thing, maybe it's an audience thing, maybe it's a tactical thing.
Right.
So understanding it from that point, but being able to test and learn along the way will help you with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly how we want to think about that. So we've talked a lot about obstacles for the last few minutes. What are the things that you're excited about for the future? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's being at the forefront of the e-commerce growth for our brand. The brand is looking at us, the e-commerce side, for a
Yeah.
lot of growth in 2024 and beyond. And there's a ton of opportunities. I look at technology as being a key piece of that along the way. We talked a little bit about AI at the beginning,
Yeah.
but whether it's AI or something else, there's always new technology that you have opportunities to look at and implement. Now, again, you can go crazy with that too. But automation, when you're a lean, mean
Yeah.
team like we are, then automation really comes into play. So, I look at that as a big part of it. And then I look at from a media perspective, some of the
Yeah.
things that you're talking about, a lot of the things that you do every single day. And that is, how do you get better with your media mix? How do you get more efficient? How do you better understand the data? And how do you better tell those stories so that you can make the right enhancements and grow on the lean budgets that, people like me and many of your customers probably have as well?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing on lean budgets is I'm pretty sure everyone thinks they have a lean budget. I'm pretty sure if you talk to any media person, even at Coca-Cola, they probably say we've got a lean budget this year. And so I think I think it is true about I think the most interesting part about media is that you can make it do whatever you need to do, and there's always an opportunity to either improve it, to scale it, to grow it, to try something different. And so when you have that kind of limitless opportunity, uh, the constraint is always budget.
Yes, there is always somebody out there that's going to have a bigger budget than you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so that's a really good perspective is, yeah, everybody thinks the same thing. So, yeah, I probably sound like I'm complaining, um, and I don't
No.
mean to, but, it's one of many challenges. Frankly, I look at things like that and I say, "It is what it is." I can't control
Yeah.
that.
Well,
And
honestly,
the way I
our best
approach it is, let's be scrappy.
I think our best marketing leaders think they have a lean budget specifically because they already know what they want to spend it on. They know their levers, and they know that if they could do this, they would be able to see more results. And so I am never surprised when someone says they have a lean budget. I'm always surprised when someone says I've got a full budget. And so I think that's the right way to think about it. Um, I think AI is and automation, you touched on it. And I'm really curious to hear about how you guys are using automation. What pieces of where are you automating things? I imagine, reporting, I hope, is one of them because I think every e-com person's daily spend and budget and revenue tracker has to be like the bane of their existence. So I know that's probably a pain point, but where are you kind of automating things?
Yeah, I think we're pretty basic currently. To
Mhm.
your point, yeah, automation and reporting. Uh, we're not perfect there either, but we're getting better. And I think that that's what
Yeah,
I always look at is, are we making progress or are we not? I think on the DTC side, automation as it relates to um, nurturing consumers
yeah,
through customer experiences. That is something that, when I got here was, essentially non-existent.
mhm,
So building on that automation, those are things that have been around a long time. Um, we're just now looking at ways and from a cross-selling, upselling perspective, how to
right,
automate that technology to use data in the background to make sure that we're doing the right level of personalization. And again, we're at the very early stages of that, but I'm a firm believer that personalization is where you have to be. Consumers'
Yeah.
attention spans are so short um, that they want relevant information when they get there, and TikTok's a great example of that.
Yeah.
You know, they've got an algorithm that's so good that you log into TikTok and you see videos that you want to see. And I'm not a
Right.
huge TikTok guy. You can tell from how long I've been around, but I know a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely does a good job of holding attention. And um, the algorithm obviously works because it has been performing so well for so many people, especially in the beauty space, right? So definitely agree with you there. My last question, Craig, what advice would you give a new marketing leader, for the first 90 days or just kind of getting settled in?
Yeah, I think what I always like to say is, listen, learn, and make sure you keep your focus on the customer. There there are going to be lots of opinions always on how to do things. Um, but the customer is the one that is the most meaningful, and that's how you're going to win in this world. I think
Yeah.
and it can be hard to do, but
Right.
to come into a new place and sit back and listen and see how things work before you actually come in and turn the place upside down, that can be hard to do. Obviously, there's always going to be things that need optimization when you come into a new role. But going back to understanding the why, there's probably a why in why people do things, why things are happening the way they are. And understanding that will help you be more successful, I believe, in the long term and help
Yeah.
you make better decisions as you go down that road. And then,
Yeah. It's
well, sorry.
no, no. I was going to say, I think the the drive as marketers to make changes as quickly as possible is a really hard one to overcome. So I think that is a really valuable piece of advice of just like taking your time there.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to do because people expect a lot. And you come into a new role and you're like, you want to prove your worth, and I'm no different. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a really tricky balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you have a P&L staring at you that you need to hit as quickly as possible, right?
And big growth goals. You got it.
Yeah. Craig, thank you so much for joining us. If someone wants to find you online, where can people go and learn more about you?
Yeah, I would go to LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me. So I can be found there. Always happy to connect. And, I love to learn about the e-commerce space. I don't know everything. And I love talking to new people and people that know more than me. So there's a lot of those.
Oh, amazing. Well, we'll include your LinkedIn in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Again, great job with the podcast and really enjoy it.
Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, remember to subscribe so you'll be notified of new episodes. And if you know someone who would enjoy this show, don't forget to share and leave a review. It all helps us impact more brands. If you're looking to improve your paid media, go to weareqry.com and schedule a consultation. We're always happy to chat. See you for the next one.